Darkcast Network. The light shines brightest on our indie podcasts.
Hi there, I'm Kona Gallagher.
And I'm Ethan Flick.
And together, we are the husband and wife team behind And Then They Were Gone, a true crime podcast about unsolved missing persons cases. Each week, we take a deep dive into a case that I have researched and written about and that you have never heard of.
Right, and I react naturally and usually leave you with a whole lot of stuff to edit out with the podcast.
Very true. But I do love getting your analysis and a fresh perspective on these crimes that I've been spending so much time learning about. So you can see us on your favorite podcast app every Wednesday when we release a brand new episode.
And find us on the socials at ATTWGPod.
And you can also visit us on our website, andthentheyweregone.com.
Could you hold the key to bringing someone home?
Hey, Rainbow Warriors. This is my disclaimer. Beyond the Rainbow is a true crime podcast. It's not suitable for young children, and maybe not even for some adults. I tend to swear like a sailor, and I'm kind of proud of that. Listener discretion is advised. Hey there, Rainbow Warriors, and welcome to Beyond the Rainbow, True Crimes of the LGBTQ+. I'm your host, CJ. I've been super busy lately. I'm sorry that it's taken me a little bit to get to this episode. I've been painting the guest room for when my daughter visits around Christmas time. And I've been busy with my new pet project. The one that I've undertaken with my podcast bestie Paige from Reverie True Crime. We're the co-founders of Darkcast Network. Darkcast Network has some of the most awesome true crime, conspiracy theory, paranormal, and just kind of obscure shows. We are 20 indie podcasts with a darkish theme. If you get a chance, follow Darkcast Network on Facebook. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, and I believe we're on TikTok as Darkcast12. We don't have much yet on TikTok, but it'll be coming. And if you love me, you're gonna love some of the other shows Darkcast represents. This episode's Missing But Not Forgotten comes to us from my friends JT and Mike. They host the podcast Brew Crime. These guys drink beer and talk about crime. What a life! But right now, for me, they're going to tell you about two missing LGBTQ+ people.
Hey there, Rainbow Warriors. This episode's Missing But Not Forgotten LGBTQ+ person is Lou Stainback. 25-year-old Lou was assigned female at birth, but is gender nonconforming and used the pronouns they, them. Lou was last seen on August 28, 2021, near Jefferson Park in Seattle. They had on a gold watch and a black backpack. Lou stands at 5 feet 4 inches tall and is slender in build. They have brown eyes, shaved eyebrows, and short, curly, light brown hair on top with shaved sides. Lou's ethnicity is white. They have tats, red and black flames on left hand, floral vines on right arm, a purple beet, like the vegetable, on inner forearm, and geometric shapes on right knee. There will be a link to a picture of Lou in the Beyond the Rainbow website. That's about all the information on Lou we could obtain at this time. If you might have information on the whereabouts of Lou, their family is very worried about them, and said it's not like Lou to be out of contact with them for so long. Please call 832-723-6740 or 832-567-7790.
Also missing is 16-year-old Devin James Reamer from Hooks, Texas. Devin is LGBTQ+, but we are not quite sure which pronouns Devin prefers. Devin was assigned male at birth, and most posts refer to Devin as he, which we will use and hope we are not being disrespectful to Devin. Devin would go by Z or Ozzy. Devin was last seen on October 6, 2021, leaving his high school in a Lyft with a white female. There is no information on who this female may have been as of yet, but she might be key to his whereabouts. The driver of the Lyft said he dropped these two passengers off at a Greyhound bus station There is reason to believe Devin may have met someone from Kansas online and he may be headed there, or he may have thought he was headed there. Again, the mysterious female might come into play here. Devin is 6 foot 2 inches and weighs roughly 160 pounds. He has hazel eyes and medium brown hair, although at the time of his disappearance, some of his hair was dyed green. Devin normally wears a lot of bracelets. Should you have any information on Devin's location or clues about his disappearance, please call the Hooks, Texas Police Department at 903-547-2222. Back to you at Seabreeze Studios, CJ.
Thanks, JT and Mike. Be sure to check out Brew Crime, the podcast. They're also part of the Darkcast Network of shows. The teenage girl looked at herself in the mirror as she tried the sexy dress on. It didn't fit right. Didn't look good. She thought she looked like a stuffed olive. The girl was about 35 pounds overweight according to society standards. She was 15 years old and she had just started high school. Cute boys didn't look her way at all, except maybe to throw a parting moo her way. She wasn't truly sure if she even cared. Did she even like boys? The girl was awkward. She was an outcast. Why were her peers so damn mean? Why couldn't anyone love her for who she was? Oh, there was one guy that liked her, but she didn't feel the same for him. He was nice enough to her, but she friend-zoned him pretty quickly. He was older than she was by about 4 years. He was an adult at the age of 19. She was still considered a child at 15. But it wasn't the age difference that deterred her from being romantic with him. It was the fact that she just wasn't attracted to him in the least. He too was like her, an outcast at school, but she kept him around as a friend. She didn't know it at the time, but in the near future, she was going to use his friendship to her advantage. Carrie was born to Don and Marianne Murphy in Humble. Humble is an area of Houston, Texas. She was the youngest of 2 kids. She has an older brother named Scott. As Carrie grew up, she had a very close relationship with her brother. She had a close relationship with her dad, too. Her mom, however, Carrie felt like her mom, Marianne, pushed her too hard to excel in life. Carrie could never seem to measure up to her brother, Scott, at least in Marianne's eyes. The relationship between mother and daughter always felt strained, if not rocky, and Carrie was damn sick of having to live up to how wonderful Scott was. The ages of 14, 15, and 16 are tough ages for teens, especially teenage girls. It's also a tough time for the teens' parents. Now, I've been on both sides of that coin. As a 14, 15, and 16-year-old, I remember being angsty and somewhat rebellious. I knew way better than my parents what was good for me and what wasn't. Or at least, I thought I did. It was my teenage hormones. I mean, come on, let's face it. Life is so questionable as a teenager. We're unsure about everything. And we're insecure about everything. Unless you're the golden child jock or the beautiful cheerleader everyone swoons over, life holds no guarantees of success. No guarantees of unconditional love from others. Many are trying to figure out not just their futures, but who they are, their sexuality and gender identity. Facing challenges such as these and not knowing if your family, friends, or classmates will accept you, especially if your sexuality or gender identity is different than societal norms, it's yet another extreme pressure put on the individual. For Carrie, who was trying to figure out who she was, her sexuality, the expectations of her mother, proved to be a major stressor that she struggled to cope with. Add that to being an outcast at school and her own body image, Carrie was dealing with some very large issues in her life. As a way to try to fit in with some of her classmates, Carrie joined the school's choir. She loved this class, and eventually she started to make friends in the class. There was one girl in particular that really stood out to Carrie. The girl was a 19-year-old senior whose name is Rebecca Keller. Rebecca went by the nickname Bunny. Bunny was a very well-liked, somewhat popular girl who had a great, if not outlandish, sense of humor. Carrie found herself extremely attracted to Bunny. Bunny was everything Carrie wasn't. Well-liked by everyone, she was confident, and she seemed to have it going on. The kind of person everyone wanted to be around. Bunny noticed Carrie, too. She noticed that Carrie had a beautiful singing voice. Bunny went out of her way to tell Carrie about how blown away she was by her voice, and the two quickly became friends. Within a few weeks, Bunny confessed to Carrie that she was bisexual, and she also told her that she was interested in more than just a friendship with Carrie. Carrie had never been in a romantic relationship with anyone before, let alone another girl. But Carrie was smitten with Bunny. This was the love and acceptance she had been yearning to have. Although to Carrie it was a forbidden love in many ways. Bunny was from the wrong side of the tracks. She lived in a trailer park on the poor side of town. Her folks barely got by. While Carrie's family was considered middle class, both of Carrie's parents had full-time jobs to keep their status in middle class. Carrie didn't think that her parents would be very accepting of her being in a same-sex relationship. She did tell her brother Scott about Bunny because she felt like she could tell him anything. She trusted Scott. But she hid her relationship with Bunny from her parents. She'd lie to her parents and tell them she was meeting up with friends or going to the movies with them. And then she'd end up going and spending her time with Bunny. After a few months together, Bunny convinced Carrie it was time to tell her parents about them. It really didn't take too much convincing. Carrie was at a point where she just wanted to get up on a rooftop and shout to the world, "I love Bunny!" So one afternoon, Carrie sat her folks down and she came out to them. She was surprised that they seemed okay with it. Her dad readily so. But her mom was a little more hesitant because 48-year-old Marianne had old-fashioned values. But being a mother who wanted her children happy above anything else, Marianne relented, even above her morals and her old-fashioned way of thinking. By summer, Carrie and Bunny had been together for months. They were discussing a future together, marriage, children, the white picket fence, and 2.5 children. It was the proverbial American dream, but with 2 women, and in California instead of Texas, because everyone knows that California seems much more liberal. The mom, Marianne, got wind of the plan that the girls were hatching up, and she didn't like it at all. It wasn't in her plan book for Carrie to move away to California, to be the wife of a woman, to have children with a woman, or none of that. One afternoon after Carrie's dad caught Carrie with Bunny in the house unsupervised together, Marianne started to become more vocal about Carrie spending too much time with Bunny. She told Carrie she didn't want Bunny coming over, nor did she want Carrie to see Bunny anymore. Marianne also had a problem with the age difference between Carrie and Bunny, and it would have been the same problem she would have had if Carrie was seeing a boy Bunny's age. Frankly, it scared Marianne to see her daughter and Bunny so obsessed with each other. She had so many bigger dreams for her daughter's future. Yes, this relationship could not continue. And in Marianne's mind, Bunny was not good for her daughter Carrie. Carrie was young, dumb, and in love, which most of us know is a very bad combination for anyone. Carrie knew in her heart she just couldn't quit Bunny. She wouldn't. Bunny was the love of her life. Bunny was her future. Carrie was now a 16-year-old high school sophomore, and Bunny was a 20-year-old high school graduate. One night in March of 2012, Carrie snuck Bunny inside her room. Marianne became aware of this and she called the police. She had Bunny arrested for trespassing. After all, it was her house, and she forbid Bunny to be there. With this desperate mother's move, Marianne put an even bigger wedge between her and her daughter Carrie. Marianne, however, knew it was all for the good of Carrie. She did what she did because she loved her daughter. Bunny was detained in jail for several weeks until she could make the bond for this trespassing charge. This whole incident would light a fire of hatred within Bunny towards Marianne. A little after 1 a.m. the night of July 16, 2012, at the Murphy house, only Carrie and her mom were home. Carrie ran from her house in a panic. She ran to a neighbor's house. She asked if she could use their phone and call 911. When the police arrived, she told them that her mom was asleep in bed and she was in another part of the house scrapbooking. She said she heard someone break into their house. It was 2 men. And then she heard her mom screaming. That's when she ran to the neighbors to call for help. Police tried to comfort Carrie as other officers entered the home. They had their weapons drawn. They searched room by room, seeing nothing out of the ordinary, until they came upon the master bedroom. On the bed, they found Marianne laying in a pool of her own blood. Later, the coroner would announce Marianne Murphy had been stabbed 73 times all over her body. The killing definitely was personal. Police brought Carrie's older brother and father in for questioning. Scott, her brother, had been at work. He was tearful when the police were interviewing him. Their father, Don, was unemotional. He didn't seem fazed that his wife had just been slaughtered. This non-reaction quickly put him at the top of the suspect list with the detectives. However, as quickly as he was put on it, his alibi of being at work all night checked out. He no longer was considered a suspect. Police later learned that Don and Marianne were having marital problems, but it couldn't have been Don who killed his wife. He'd already been cleared. After an examination of Marianne's cell phone, police saw that there was a number Marianne called, and that number called Marianne an awful lot. The number belonged to a man, a co-worker of Marianne's, and it was determined a little bit later that Marianne and this co-worker were having an affair. Police brought the co-worker in for questioning. Her lover was visibly shaken when told the news of Marianne's murder. His alibi also checked out, and he too was cleared of suspicion. Carrie was brought into the station to tell her story again. She once again told the police that 2 men had broken into her house. No, she didn't see who they were, but they attacked her mom while her mom slept. Carrie also submitted to a polygraph for the detectives. And apparently Carrie's not as good of a liar as she thought she was, because she failed the polygraph miserably. But yes, we all know that polygraph tests aren't the end-all to an actual investigation. But Carrie was now on the hot seat, so she told the detectives she knew who killed her mom. Remember the guy I mentioned in the beginning of the story? The guy with the crush on Carrie that she ended up friend-zoning almost immediately? His name is Zain Ahmed, and that's who Carrie fingered. Ooh. That was a poor choice of words. Zain is who Carrie told the detectives killed her mom. Carrie said that Zain was mad at her mom. He was mad at Marianne because she didn't like Carrie dating someone Bunny's age, and he was Bunny's age. Carrie also told the police Zain was obsessed with her and stalked her. Police readily picked up Zain for questioning. I haven't shared too much about Zain. He had some learning disabilities that he struggled with, along with being a social outcast. Zain was intensely interrogated for hours and hours by a detective. Finally, for the umpteenth time, he was asked again, did he kill Marianne? Zane admitted to it. He said, yes, I did it. And then the detective wanted to know details. So in his confession, Zane told him that he broke in, walked upstairs to Marianne's bedroom, and stabbed her 4 times. Oh, and yeah, he still had the murder weapon. It was at his house in his bedroom. Now, as a detective, I'd have some major problems with Zane's account of the murder. First, Marianne was stabbed 73 times, not 4. And my other issue would be, the Murphy house is a 1-story house, not 2 stories with stairs of any kind. But Houston police and this particular detective, they seemed A-okay with Zane's recollection of events. He was arrested for the murder of Marianne Murphy. Zane's parents were his alibi. They said he was home all night playing video games and they could prove it. But the detective just didn't want to know. When the police went and searched Zane's home for the murder weapon he supposedly used, they only found a pocket knife in Zane's room. A pocket knife that Zane would use to clean underneath his fingernails with. Carrie's differing stories were earning her more attention than she would have liked. When the police found Marianne that night, her blood had already coagulated and dried some. This means that Carrie waited longer than she told the police she did to run from her home to the neighbor's house. So these big neon arrows started to direct detectives Carrie's way. They found out that Carrie had been grounded by her mom Marianne, and that Marianne had forbidden Carrie to see or communicate in any way with her lover, a girl named Rebecca Keller, also known as Bunny. Police found a burner phone that Bunny had given Carrie after Marianne had grounded her. After looking at the records of that burner phone, it appeared that Bunny's number exchanged texts with that burner phone quite a bit that night, the night of Marianne's murder, and an examination of Carrie's internet history showed a search for how to kill someone quickly at the same time she was texting with Bunny. Carrie was arrested for her mother's murder. Months later, as detectives were still trying to put the puzzle pieces together of Marianne's homicide, Bunny was brought in for questioning about Marianne's murder. She told the police it was Carrie's idea to have Zane and his friend kill Marianne. So much for unconditional love. Bunny was arrested October 29, 2012 for first-degree murder. Just 2 days after that, Zane was out on bail. It seemed his mom had sold all of her expensive jewelry from Pakistan, jewelry that had been passed down from generation to generation, just so she could afford his bail bond. Zane was now telling everyone he did nothing wrong, that the cops coerced a confession out of him. By the end of December, all the charges against Zane had been dropped, as they should have been. Carrie and Bunny remained in jail. Carrie, although 16 years old, would be tried as an adult. Bunny was not only being charged with the first-degree murder of Marianne, but she was also getting charged with the sexual assault of a child, since she was an adult and Carrie was still a child. At trial, Carrie received a 30-year sentence for her part in her mother's murder. Bunny received 60 years for the murder of Marianne Murphy and the sexual assault of a minor. I think what bothers me most about this case, besides Marianne's murder, of course, is how detectives can be so damn sloppy in their work. They coerce people into false confessions just so they can say they solved a case. Surprisingly, though, the main detective in this case was under scrutiny, and he ended up in court a couple times for misconduct. One of the times was for getting that false confession from Zane. It would seem in the same time frame, This detective had 8 confessions for different cases, and 2 of them, including Zane's, had been dropped for coercion. This is where we as citizens need to call for police reform. It's not just going to happen if we pray or hope it will. We need to be proactive with our voices and make sure that these cops are getting retrained and better trained to serve us. It's their job to serve and protect, not to be lazy-ass bullies. Our quickie crime this episode comes to us from a homeless encampment in Burlington, Vermont. On May 21st of 2016, a 38-year-old trans man named Amos Beatty was at a concert with his girlfriend. After the concert, he walked her home, and he planned on doing what he did on a regular basis. He was going to visit and check on people in a homeless encampment. That's just the kind of guy Amos was. He promised to text his girlfriend when he got to the camp, but he never did. Now let me explain a little bit the kind of guy Amos was. There was a day he was at a Panera bakery. He saw a woman who was sitting alone drinking a cup of coffee. She had a look of sadness and despair on her face. Amos didn't know it, but the woman had just found herself homeless. Amos walked over to her and he offered her his bagel. She hungrily accepted it. Amos then sat down and the two talked. The woman left the Panera bakery feeling so much better about herself and so much better about what was happening to her at the time thanks to Amos. Amos felt very tied to the people in the encampments. He was a very compassionate, a very empathetic person. He would often stay a weekend night with them, getting to know their life stories. In fact, the night he was murdered happened to be one of the nights he was staying in the encampment. So, this next part here that I'm going to present to you, it's a factor in this case that I would have never thought about before. This particular encampment had a nearby rival homeless encampment. A rival? Something like that has just never occurred to me. I would have assumed all homeless who live in an encampment in Burlington, Vermont, or anywhere would all just live in the same one. This was not the case in 2016 Burlington, Vermont. A couple of nights prior to May 21st, Amos was visiting the encampment of people that he occasionally stayed with. He ended up calling the police on people that were screaming and yelling and exhibiting some very threatening behavior. It was also said that Amos had thrown a bottle or a cup of urine on one of the opposing encampment users' tents. Apparently someone did, but it was never confirmed that it was Amos. And quite frankly, from everything I read on Amos, he didn't seem like the type to start shit like that. But whoever threw the urine on the tent, pardon the pun, but they really pissed off a group of transients royally. The police responded to the disturbance call. Amos asked if he could file a restraining order on a young man. He could only identify this young man as someone named Eric. Police asked Amos to identify this Eric, but Amos said he wouldn't unless the order went into effect immediately. And the police couldn't promise that, so Amos just backed off. Then on the night of May 21st, 5 young adults, 2 men, 3 women, ages 21 to 30, went into the rival encampment. This is where Amos was staying. They found the tent Amos was in and they pulled him out as he lay sleeping. They beat him with a plastic milk crate. They stomped on him. They beat him with their fists. Amos could be heard yelling, "Stop! Stop! I'll leave and I won't come back!" His attackers were telling him to shut the fuck up. After the attack on Amos and walking away, it was said that the 2 young men of the group of 5 went back and they beat Amos some more. Amos died 6 days later in the hospital from the injuries he sustained that night. The injuries included broken ribs, internal bleeding, facial fractures, and a subdural hemorrhage. This subdural hemorrhage occurs when blood vessels burst between the brain and the membrane that surround the brain. Initially, it was thought there were only 4 attackers, 2 men and 2 women, but the 5th attacker was identified as 30-year-old Amber Dennis, and she was taken into custody in Vermont. The other 4 attackers were found in San Diego, California on a beach on June 3, 2016. This was about a week after Amos died. The 4 that were found together were arrested for killing Amos, and they were extradited back to Vermont. They are 21-year-old Eric Averill, 22-year-old Mia Barber, 25-year-old Allison G., and 21-year-old Jordan Paul. Eric Averill is thought to have been the ringleader of the attack on Amos. All 5 of the transient suspects were charged with second-degree murder, and all 5 of them pleaded not guilty. One of the suspects' attorney tried to subpoena Amos's mental health records because he wanted to prove that since Amos was a trans man, he must have some mental health issues that provoked the group attack on him. Yet another dirty lawyer trying to victim blame. The judge denied the request, stating that Amos's mental health was not in question. The 2 young men suspects, well, they turned on each other, each saying that the other one did 90% of the damage to Amos. All in all, it doesn't really fucking matter. They were all accountable in some way, shape, or form for Amos's murder. Allison G. took a plea deal in which she testified against the other 4 suspects. In return, she received the lesser charge of aggravated assault. She was only made the deal by the state because she had no prior charges, and she had young children who depended on her. She also seemed to be the least involved in Amos's beating. Apparently, a little later on, Amber Dennis received the same deal. She pleaded guilty to aggravated assault. Mia Barber accepted a guilty plea of involuntary manslaughter. She was sentenced to a minimum of 10 years in 2017. In 2018, Eric Averill changed his plea to guilty of manslaughter. He received 14 years in prison for his sentence. And in 2019, the last attacker, Jordan Paul, went to trial. He pleaded guilty to manslaughter. He received 12 to 15 years in prison. I guess Amos will receive partial unicorn justice. Rest in power, Amos. Love you, Rainbow Warriors. Remember, it's not a crime to be gay, trans, or to live your truth. Unless you're a murderer.